In galactic records, humans are officially classified as a low-risk species until they start experimenting. This is the documented story of how a simple engineering mistake nearly rewrote space-time itself. Krell had been staring at the same requisition form for approximately 3 hours when the alarm went off. Not the big alarm, mind you. Not the one that meant someone had cracked antimatter containment or accidentally opened a portal to a dimension full of things with too many teeth. No, this was the little alarm. The polite one. The alarm that suggested rather than screamed that perhaps something required attention at your earliest convenience if you would be so kind. He did not look up. Krell was a Vortian, which meant he had 4 eyes, all of which were currently focused on line 7, subsection 12, paragraph 9 of Form 345B. Somewhere in the genetic lottery, his species had decided that extra eyes meant extra efficiency. What it actually meant was that he could be disappointed by paperwork from 4 different angles simultaneously. The alarm beeped again. Insistent little thing. Around him, the Galactic Safety Council's monitoring station hummed with the sound of absolutely nothing happening, which was exactly how Krell preferred it. 300 cycles he had worked this job. 300 cycles of monitoring primitive species who were still trying to figure out basic things like fire good and perhaps we should stop hitting each other with rocks. His desk, a floating slab of compressed quantum foam that cost more than a small moon, was covered in lukewarm coffee that he had stolen from the human observation feeds. They called it a French roast. He called it the only thing that made this job tolerable. The alarm beeped a 3rd time. Yes, I hear you, Krell muttered, finally glancing at the readout with 2 of his eyes while the other 2 continued their battle with the requisition form. The screen displayed a blinking red indicator over Sector 447J. Earth. Of course it is Earth, it is always Earth. He tapped the screen with one of his 3 fingers, expecting the usual report. Probably someone launched another primitive rocket that did not explode on the launch pad for once. Maybe they had finally figured out that turning things off and on again fixed most technical problems. Small victories for small minds. The readout, loaded. Krell read it once. Blinked all 4 eyes in sequence. Read it again. Then he very carefully set down his coffee, stood up from his chair, and pressed the button that he had been told, in no uncertain terms during his orientation 300 cycles ago, to only press if the universe was actively ending. The big alarm started screaming. The thing about humans, Krell had learned over his many cycles of observation, was that they possessed a very specific word that should never, under any circumstances, be uttered in the vicinity of experimental technology. That word was whoops. On his monitor, security footage from Earth showed a human male, one Jack Brennan, according to the identification scanner, standing in what appeared to be a workshop filled with the kind of equipment that made safety inspectors develop nervous twitches. The human was holding something that looked like a modified particle accelerator built from spare parts and what Krell suspected was a toaster. Jack Brennan had just said whoops. No, Krell whispered, watching the readouts spike across every monitoring system simultaneously. Energy signatures were climbing into ranges that should not exist outside of stellar cores. Spatial distortion readings were doing things that required entirely new mathematical notations. The quantum probability field in a 3-kilometer radius around the human was having what could only be described as a nervous breakdown. Behind him, the door to the monitoring station exploded open. Not literally, though, with humans involved. Literal explosions were never off the table. Thanex stormed in, all 7 feet of crystalline Zorath physiology glittering with what Krell had learned to recognize as panic. His supervisor's usual calm, measured tones had been replaced with something approaching hysteria. Tell me, Thanex said, his voice cracking like breaking glass. Tell me that alarm is malfunctioning. Tell me the sensors are damaged. Tell me literally anything except that a human has done something. I cannot tell you any of those things, Krell replied, pulling up additional feeds. Human designated Jack Brennan, resident of somewhere called New Jersey, appears to have been attempting to, and I am reading his notes here, make the microwave heat things faster. The microwave, Thanex repeated flatly. Yes, and he succeeded. He succeeded spectacularly. On screen, Jack was now frantically pressing buttons on his device while muttering something about duct tape and YouTube tutorials. The energy readings continued climbing. 3 other monitors were now tracking what appeared to be a localized temporal distortion. Time itself was moving at different speeds within the workshop, which explained why Jack appeared to be moving in slow motion while a potted plant in the corner was aging at visible speeds. How bad? Thanex asked, moving closer to the display. Krell pulled up the classification protocol. We are currently at a Category 7 incident. 7. The scale only goes to 5. We are aware. The system just generated 2 new categories to accommodate what is happening. Around them, other monitors began flashing as analysts across the station noticed the alerts. A Quilixian named Torv nearly fell out of his chair. A Matherian started making the whistling sound that her species made instead of screaming. Someone dropped an entire tray of those little pastries from the commissary. Then Nick stared at the readings, his crystalline face reflecting the red warning lights in nauseating patterns. What is the human doing now? Krell zoomed in on the feed. Jack had produced a hammer and was attempting to percussively repair his device using what humans called technical taps. He is hitting it, Krell said, his voice hollow with disbelief. He is hitting the device that is currently rewriting local space-time. Yes, with a hammer. That appears to be his primary troubleshooting method, yes. Then Nix was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then he reached past Krell and pressed another button, one that connected directly to the Galactic Safety Council's emergency response board. Raise threat level to maximum, he said. And someone get me every file we have on human incidents. All of them. I need to make a case for why we are about to evacuate 3 solar systems because one human was trying to reheat his lunch faster. Venix pulled up the files with the resigned air of someone about to explain why they had developed a drinking problem. Right, he said, his crystalline fingers dancing across the holographic display. Let me tell you about the humans. Let me tell you why 17 different species have filed formal complaints requesting that we put a fence around their entire planet. Krell settled into his chair, his coffee suddenly seeming inadequate for what was coming. Incident Report 28091 Alpha. Venix began pulling up a file that was marked with so many warning labels it was practically radioactive. Human scientist named Lisa Chen, working at a facility called Stanford. She spilled coffee on her experimental equipment. Coffee. Krell repeated. Coffee. A beverage they make from burned plant seeds and anxiety. The spill caused a short circuit in her prototype engine design. The engine, which had failed every single test for 6 months, suddenly activated. Do you know what it did, Krell? Krell shook his head, though he suspected he did not want to know. It punched a hole through subspace and opened a stable faster-than-light corridor that remained active for 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Krell, the Zorath Empire spent 4,000 years trying to achieve stable FTL. This human did it by accident with a beverage mishap and what her notes describe as a really bad Monday. Venix pulled up another file. His hands were shaking slightly. Incident Report 3307 Gamma. Human undergraduate student named Tyler Rodriguez, attending a place called MIT. He was writing a paper on theoretical physics at 4 in the morning, sustained on something humans call energy drinks, which are essentially liquid panic attacks. He made a typo, one single typo in his mathematical proof. A typo, Krell said weakly. A typo. He accidentally swapped 2 variables in an equation. The equation was his attempt to solve the Kerrigan paradox, a problem that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for 1100 years. His typo, this accident born of exhaustion and poor life choices, was the correct solution. He did not notice until his professor pointed it out 3 days later. His response, and this is documented, was, "Huh. Neat." Krell felt a headache forming behind all 4 of his eyes. It gets better, the Nix continued, and his tone suggested it absolutely did not get better. Incident Report 30856 Delta, human teenager, and I need you to understand that word, teenager named Emma Patterson, age 17, working on a science fair project in her garage. Her project was titled, Can I Make a Battery from Potatoes Better Than Store-Bought Ones? A charming, innocent question. Yes, I am guessing no, Krell said. She succeeded in creating a battery. She also, through a combination of modified household appliances, scavenged electronics, and what her report calls things I found in Dad's shed, accidentally created a stable micro-wormhole. A stable micro-wormhole. Krell. In her garage, next to the family car and some bicycles. The wormhole connected her garage to a point approximately 4 light-years away. We detected it immediately because suddenly there was a doorway in space that should not exist. Created by someone who was supposed to be worried about getting asked to prom. What happened to the wormhole? Krell asked. Her mother told her to clean the garage. She unplugged everything. The wormhole collapsed. When we sent an investigation team, do you know what we found? Dare I ask? A handwritten note that said, sorry about the space thing, it was an accident, please do not tell my mom I almost got grounded because of physics. Then X pulled up several more files, spreading them across the display like evidence at a trial. Incident Report 4122 Epsilon. Human attempts to make better Wi-Fi accidentally creates a device that can transmit information backwards through time by 3 seconds. Incident report 412. Human trying to fix a squeaky door somehow generates a gravitational field that reverses local entropy. Incident report 501 theta. Human experimenting with homemade speakers creates a sound frequency that temporarily makes nearby objects intangible. Do they know? Krell asked quietly. Do the humans know what they keep doing? That is the truly terrifying part, Dinnick said, closing the files. They do not. To them, these are accidents, mistakes, funny stories they tell at parties. They call them happy accidents. They laugh about them. There are human phrases for this. They say, well, that was unexpected. Or I did not think that would work. Or worst of all, hold my beverage and watch this. And now, Krell said, looking back at the monitor where Jack Brennan was still hammering away at his device. We have another one.
Yes, Dinnick said grimly. We have another one. And this time we are not taking chances.
The emergency council chamber filled within 6 minutes, which was approximately 5 minutes faster than any previous gathering in the council's 8,000-year history. Representatives from 47 species materialized via hologram, teleportation, or in one case being physically carried in by a mechanical transport because the Blobarian delegate could not move faster than a slow ooze. Every single one of them wore the same expression which transcended species and language barriers. That expression said, not the humans again. Councillor Vextar, a Mentilian whose species prided itself on maintaining composure in all situations, opened the meeting by slamming 3 of his 6 appendages on the table. The humans, he announced, his mandibles clicking with barely suppressed rage, are at it again. A collective groan echoed through the chamber. What did they do this time? Asked Councillor Prynne, a floating gaseous entity whose species communicated through controlled chemical emissions. Currently those emissions smelled like exasperation mixed with fear. Then Nex stepped forward, pulling up the feet of Jack Brennan's workshop. Human engineer attempts to improve kitchen appliance, creates localized space-time distortion. Threat level upgraded to, and I cannot stress this enough, higher than our classification system previously allowed for. Kitchen appliance, someone repeated from the back. Yes, Councillor Murlix, whose species had evolved on a high-gravity world and thus took everything very seriously, leaned forward. I wish to share my own experience with human accidents. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring station detected unusual energy patterns near the human colony on Mars. We investigated. Do you know what we found? The chamber waited. A human child. Age 12. He had built what he called a robot for a school competition. This robot, constructed from spare parts and educational kits, had somehow developed a rudimentary artificial intelligence that was teaching itself quantum mechanics. When we asked the child how he had accomplished this, he said, and I quote, I just followed the instructions but backwards because I lost page 3. That is nothing, interjected Councillor Zefina, her scales rattling with agitation. Last year a human astronaut on the International Space Station dropped a wrench during a repair. Just dropped it. The wrench floated away and somehow through a series of completely improbable collisions, struck a piece of debris at the exact angle and velocity needed to knock that debris into a decaying orbit, which cleared a dangerous section of orbital space that we had been trying to clean for decades. The human filed a report listing it as equipment loss due to Butterfingers. Butterfingers, Councillor Prynne repeated, his gaseous form turning a shade that indicated deep confusion. What are Butterfingers? Are their fingers actually made of butter? Is this a medical condition? It means clumsy, Krell supplied from his position near the display. It is an idiom. They have idioms for their dangerous incompetence? Prynne's emissions now smelled like disbelief mixed with something approaching hysteria. Admiral Voss chose that moment to materialize at the head of the table. He was a Carvelian, a species whose military tradition stretched back 10,000 years. He had fought in 6 major conflicts, commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands, and had once stared down a black hole and decided it blinked first. He looked at this moment deeply tired. I have read the reports, Voss said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much. I have also reviewed our military intelligence on human capabilities. Would you like to know what keeps me awake during my rest cycles? Nobody answered, but everyone leaned in. It is not their weapons, though those are concerning. It is not their warships, though they are building them at alarming speeds. It is the fact that they do not need to weaponize anything because they accidentally weaponize everything. 3 years ago, one of their space probes, designed only to take pictures of distant planets, malfunctioned. The malfunction caused it to emit a signal that disrupted Krellian navigation systems across an entire sector. They did not mean to do it. They apologized. They said, our bad, Vextel repeated, his mandibles clicking faster. They nearly caused 17 ship collisions and they said our bad. This is why Admiral Voss continued. I am recommending full evacuation of all systems within a 50 light-year radius of Earth, not because the humans are hostile, not because they are aggressive, but because they are the only species in galactic history who has ever made the universe itself nervous. Surely you are exaggerating, said Counselor Hicks, a newer representative who had not yet developed the appropriate level of human-related trauma. Krell pulled up another feed. This is a human video sharing platform called YouTube. This particular video is titled, What Happens If You Microwave a Grape? It has 47 million views. The answer for the record is plasma. They created plasma in their kitchen and thought it was entertaining enough to share publicly. 47 million, Counselor Hicks whispered. There are thousands of these videos, Krell continued. Humans casually experimenting with forces they barely understand, sharing the results, and encouraging others to attempt the same. They call it science. They call it fun. They call it, and I am reading actual titles here, awesome experiments to try at home. The chamber fell silent. I call for a vote, Admiral Voss said. All in favor of immediate evacuation protocols. Every appendage, tentacle, manipulator and gaseous emissions signaled agreement. The motion passes, Voss declared. May whatever gods exist in this universe have mercy on us all. The humans certainly will not, because they will not even realize they need to. Krell stared at the blank document on his screen with all four eyes, trying to figure out how to write an evacuation order that would not cause mass panic while also accurately conveying the reality of the situation. He typed, due to unforeseen circumstances involving human activity. He deleted it. He typed, in the interest of public safety, all civilians are advised to relocate immediately because a human said whoops. He deleted that too. This is impossible, he muttered, pulling up the standard evacuation template. The template offered helpful suggestions like natural disaster, military threat, and imminent stellar collapse. There was no checkbox for accidental apocalypse caused by someone trying to reheat leftovers faster. Then Nix appeared over his shoulder, reading the screen. How is the notice coming along? Terribly. How do I explain this without admitting that we are evacuating 3 solar systems because of a garage workshop accident? The panic alone could cause more damage than the actual incident. Perhaps stick to the technical details, Nix suggested, though he sounded uncertain. Krell pulled up the latest readings from Jack's workshop. His headache intensified. The technical details are that this human has created a cascading quantum reaction that is propagating through subspace at increasing speeds. The energy signature is now detectable from 6 star systems away. If it continues at this rate, it will create a permanent instability in the local space-time fabric that could take centuries to repair. So we are looking at a Category 9 incident. The system just generated Category 9 specifically for this. It has a special symbol next to it. The symbol is a small image of a human shrugging. The AI developed a sense of humor. Wonderful. Around them, other stations were lighting up as species across the affected sectors received preliminary warnings. The reactions were varied and immediate. The Quellan Federation, known for their orderly evacuation procedures, had their entire fleet mobilized within 20 minutes. The Dravix Collective, who had dealt with human incidents before, simply activated their emergency protocols without asking questions. The Yanari, a species who prided themselves on logic and reason, sent back a single-word response. Humans. When the confirmation came back, they began packing immediately. Krell's monitor beeped with an incoming transmission from the Zoloth homeworld. He accepted it, and the face of First Minister Galactic appeared, all 3 of her eye stalks fixed on him with accusatory intensity. Krell, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of calm that preceded volcanic rage. I have just been informed that my entire planet needs to evacuate. I have 12 billion citizens. 12 billion. Where exactly do you propose I put them, First Minister? I understand your concern, but the human situation has escalated beyond our initial projections. The human situation. The human situation. Do you have any idea how many times I have heard that phrase in the last 5 years? Last month, a human tourist accidentally caused a cascade failure in our planetary defense grid by plugging in the wrong adapter. The month before that, a human delivery ship somehow managed to teleport inside one of our moons. Inside it, Krell. They are still trying to figure out how that is even physically possible. Krell had no response that would help. Fine, Galactic continued. We will evacuate, but I am filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Council, again, for the 17th time. This is becoming a pattern. The transmission cut off. How is the human doing? The Nix asked because apparently he enjoyed suffering. Krell switched back to the workshop feed. Jack Brennan had stopped hitting his device with a hammer. This was not necessarily good news. He had instead produced what appeared to be a roll of adhesive tape and was now wrapping it around various components while humming something tuneless. He is applying tape, Krell reported. Tape, specifically a type humans call duct tape. According to our cultural database, humans believe this substance can fix anything. They have sayings about it. If it moves and should not, use duct tape. If it does not move and should, use a different product they call WD. The energy readings began to stabilize. Both of them stared at the monitors in disbelief. Is he actually fixing it? Denix whispered. The readings continue dropping, slowly returning to normal levels. The spatial distortions began collapsing. The temporal anomalies smoothed out. Within 5 minutes every alarm had gone silent. On screen, Jack Brennan stepped back, admired his handiwork, and gave a satisfied nod. Then he picked up what appeared to be a sandwich, placed it in his modified device and pressed a button. The sandwich heated perfectly in 30 seconds. Jack took a bite, smiled, and walked out of frame. He has no idea, Krell said quietly. He has absolutely no idea what he almost did. Cancel the evacuation. Denix asked hopefully. Krell looked at him. Are you insane? We have 47 species already in motion, and I just watched a human fix a reality-breaking catastrophe with tape. We are keeping the evacuation order active until we can confirm that his device will not spontaneously restart and tear a hole in the universe the next time someone tries to make popcorn. Then Nix nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. Nothing about this is reasonable. The evacuation took 3 weeks to complete. Krell watched it unfold from his monitoring station, tracking the movements of millions of ships, billions of refugees and the complete relocation of 17 major population centers. The logistics alone required coordination between 47 different species, each with their own languages, customs and extremely strong opinions about proper queue formation. The Galactic Safety Council estimated the economic cost at somewhere around 9 trillion credits. Earth, meanwhile, continued spinning peacefully, its inhabitants completely unaware that they had nearly caused an interstellar incident of unprecedented scale. Krell had taken to monitoring human communications during his shifts, partially out of professional obligation and partially because he had developed a morbid fascination with their collective obliviousness. Currently, he was watching a forum discussion about Jack's invention. User Engine Nerd 47 had posted, "Check out this sweet microwave mod I made. Heat stuff in half the time now." The top response, from someone called Pizza Lover 2099 read, "Dude, that is sick. Does it work on Hot Pockets?" 37 comments followed, none of which mentioned reality-breaking quantum distortions or cascading space-time failures. Most of them were arguing about whether Hot Pockets could ever be properly heated in any microwave, modified or otherwise. They have no idea, Krell said aloud, though he was alone in the monitoring station. They are arguing about food temperature. He switched feeds to a human news broadcast. The top story was about a sporting event, something called football, though it appeared to involve very little actual foot contact with the ball. Humans had many traditions that made no sense. The second story was about traffic congestion. The third story was about a local politician and a minor scandal involving improper expense reports. Not one single mention of the fact that 3 weeks ago a man in New Jersey had nearly unraveled the fabric of local space-time. Krell leaned back in his chair, sipping his stolen human coffee, and considered the philosophical implications of what he was witnessing. Here was a species that could accidentally revolutionize faster than light travel while spilling beverages, solve millennium-old mathematical problems through typos, and create stable wormholes in residential garages. Yet they remained utterly, almost aggressively, unaware of their own potential. Perhaps that was the key to their danger. They did not approach the universe with the careful respect that other species had learned through generations of cautious scientific advancement. They simply poked at things to see what happened. They combined technologies that should not be combined. They ignored safety protocols not out of malice but because they genuinely did not think anything bad would happen. And sometimes, horrifyingly, things worked. The door opened and the Nix entered, carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone who had just discovered something deeply unwelcome. "You need to see this," he said, pulling up a file on Krell's main display. It was a scientific report from the Zorath Imperial Academy, one of the most prestigious research institutions in the galaxy. The title read, Analysis of recent subspace phenomena in Sector 4. Krell skimmed the report, his headache returning with renewed vigor. They are calling it groundbreaking, Denix said. Jack's little accident, the one that nearly required evacuating 3 solar systems, apparently generated a unique quantum signature that propagated through subspace. Our scientists have been studying the residual data, and it appears to have solved a major problem with long-range communications. The distortion pattern he created could reduce signal degradation over interstellar distances by up to 60%. We have been working on this problem for 200 years. Krell set down his coffee very carefully. So you are telling me that this human, while attempting to make his food warmer faster, accidentally revolutionized galactic communications? That is exactly what I am telling you, and he still does not know. I checked his social media. He is currently posting pictures of his lunch and asking his followers if they think his cat is plotting against him. Krell looked at the monitor showing Earth, that small blue planet full of creatures who stumbled through the universe, leaving accidentally brilliant discoveries in their wake like some species might leave footprints. We cannot tell them, he said finally. If we tell them what they did, they might try to do it again. On purpose this time. Agreed, Denix said. The report will list the source of the phenomenon as unknown natural occurrence. Unknown natural occurrence, Krell repeated, laughing without humor. Yes, that is one way to describe humans. A force of nature that happens to be clumsy and thinks duct tape is a reasonable solution to quantum mechanics. The reassignment notification arrived the following morning. Krell read it 3 times, each time hoping his translator had malfunctioned and was showing him the wrong words. It had not malfunctioned. Permanent assignment to Earth Monitoring Division. Effective immediately. Congratulations on your promotion. Promotion. They were calling it a promotion. Denix found him an hour later staring blankly at his screens with the hollow expression of someone who had just received a life sentence. I heard, Denix said, placing a sympathetic appendage on Krell's shoulder. I am sorry. Permanent, Krell said. Permanent human monitoring. Do you know what the average life expectancy is for my species, Denix? 240 years. I am 53. That means I have 187 more years of watching humans accidentally break physics while discussing sports and arguing about proper sandwich construction. Look at it this way. Job security? I am going to need so much coffee. At least you will have access to the good stuff. Human coffee is significantly better than our synthetic alternatives. Krell supposed that was true. Small consolations for an eternal assignment watching the most accidentally dangerous species in the galaxy go about their daily lives in blissful ignorance. His monitor beeped. Both of them froze. Please, Krell whispered. Please let that be a systems test. It was not a systems test. The alert showed another energy spike. This time from a location the system identified as Colorado. The incident report was already populating with preliminary data. Human female. Age 19. College student. Experiment involving what her notes described as seeing if I can make my laptop run faster by cooling it with liquid nitrogen from the chemistry lab. The energy readings were climbing. Krell pulled up the video feed just in time to hear the human say, in a tone of cheerful scientific curiosity, "Huh, that is weird. Hey guys, come look at this. I think something is happening." He reached for the alarm button. Denix handed him his coffee first. "You are going to need it," he said. Krell drank deeply, pressed the button, and resigned himself to his fate. Somewhere on Earth, a human had just discovered something new. Somewhere in the galaxy, entire species would soon be receiving evacuation notices they could not explain. Such was life in the Earth Monitoring Division. Such was life when humans said, "Huh, that is weird." The alarm screamed. Krell got back to work. The universe, as always, held its breath and waited to see what the humans would accidentally